Explosion Oaks Fast and Furious podcast, and we don't have friends, we have family. Each week in the lead up to Fast and Furious 9, we shall be cracking a crane to discuss the films, character, music, and more of the Fast Saga. My name is Dylan Blight, and joining me today, still cringing after last week's episode, Kieran Marchant.
Still hadn't, I knew it was coming this time, and I still feel my insides twisting up inside of me and trying to escape. But you know, what's up, everyone? Hello.
It's a great intro. It's poetic. That took me like a good hour to write. Also here, Ashley Hobley.
Hey, John, excited to be here because I know that you live your life one Fast and Furious movie at a time. Nothing else matters. Not the mortgage, not the store, not your team, and all their bullshit for an hour and a half or an hour and a half or more. You're free.
Damn right. Damn right. So this week's episode, we're officially getting into actual Fast and Furious movies. If last week you were like, better luck tomorrow. What? Get the hell out of here. Watch a real movie. Watch one with cars. This week we're talking about the actual Fast and Furious. Released in 2001, directed by Rob Cohen, written by Scott Thompson, of which who did the screenplay and story. Erik Bergquist did the screenplay, and David Ayer did the screenplay as well, which is interesting factoid for those, because of course he's a bigger dude these days over there doing Suicide Squad and whatever else. And it was based on the magazine article Racer X, which was written by Ken Lee.
Wow, based on the Speed Racer character.
Nope, not right. The synopsis for the film is Los Angeles police officer Brian O'Connor must decide where his loyalty really lies when he becomes enamored with the street racing world he has been sent undercover to destroy.
Let's go for a little ride.
I'll go, just to go first. I love this movie. I mean, that's the obvious. I'd watched this movie for a little while. I've watched it so many times over the years that I could. It's like know it like the back of my hand. Really, it used to be, and I'll bring this in now because I feel like this is. I left this out from last week's thing because I feel like it's also an important factor towards maybe subconsciously why I really like the Fast and Furious movies somewhat, which is that. Growing up when I was a kid, because as I said, the first one's coming out when I was like 11, 12, 13, something like that, I think, around that age. When the first one eventually hit Ozstar at the time, kids, this is like Foxtel these days or whatever. It was Ozstar.
It's for people who couldn't afford Foxtel.
Yeah. No, we only had Ozstar.
No, in Victoria, you couldn't get Foxtel. You could only get Ozstar.
Victoria,
we
could only afford Foxtel. The whole state of Victoria.
Foxtel
No, there was no Foxtel. It was only Ozstar.
Only Ozstar.
Yeah, there was only Ozstar. But so they used to have when Fast and Furious came to Ozstar at the time, my nan would watch the movie on repeat. We would go down and visit my grandparents every single weekend, and she would be watching the movie again and would be like, Nan, you've seen it 10 times. Why are you still watching it? Oh, it's good though. I enjoy it. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like my 11-year-old kid. My nan's fucking obsessed with watching this Fast and Furious movie, and she went on to really like number 2, Tokyo Drift, 4. She loved them, and that's like a weird thing I have in my mind. I think, obviously, and because she's passed away now, it's like one of those weird things I hold where I'm like, for some reason, I like relate the Fast and Furious movies to my nan, which you wouldn't think works. But so it does.
What you're saying is the Fast and Furious movies for you is all about family.
Damn right.
Yeah,
a lot of ways. Yeah. So that's like often when I watch this movie, I think about my nan, and all the times would go see her, go visit her, and she'd be watching this fucking movie on repeat for some reason. But as a movie, it's just cool. I mean, I have no other way to really describe it, and it's like. The music, the characters, everyone's just hip and cool. It's like the way they're dressed, the music, the cool cars. Like, I remember being a little kid watching this and just being like, I was, as much as the synopsis says, I was like Brian O'Connor as a little kid. Like, I was enamored with, I want to be a street racer when I grow up. Like, this was not a movie I should have been watching because it made me want to do illegal shit when I grow up or something like that. I was like, this is the lifestyle. I want to lead this shit. But yeah, and still just rewatching it, it's like, I also think this movie definitely ruined Point Break for me because, of course, this movie is a ripoff of Point Break, but I watched this before Point Break. So I can't watch Point Break and find it as exciting because I'm like, it's a rip-off of Fast and Furious. It doesn't work out the same. The characters aren't as cool and everything like that. Yeah, I love this movie. I could watch it many, many times and I'll happily continue watching it for the rest of my life. Ash, how do you feel about the first Fast and Furious movie?
It's enjoyable. It's a bit dated. Some of the effects are not like some of the effect choices are not great. Like when they do the NOS and then it's all shaky and
but that's what happens when you
and then
NOS into your car.
the slow-mo thing where it's like, I don't know how to describe the frames like overlapping.
It's 2001. What do you want?
I'm just saying it's dated. They should remake the first Fast and
No. Don't touch perfection.
Yeah, it's just. I mean, there was not a lot of street racing when you think about it for a movie that's about street racing.
That's a good point, Ash. That is a good point.
It's like,
and since you've said that,
2-3 races.
Since you've said that, I want to bring up a point that I've been waiting to drop on this podcast at some point, which is that for everyone that complains and says these movies used to be about cars and street racing, they've never been about cars and street racing. Cars and street racing has always been an element in the movies. However, these movies have always, since the first one, been about crime. It's been about the criminal underworld and doing crime stuff.
Well, I mean, they're doing illegal street racing, so it was always illegal.
Yeah, that's like it's like Tokyo Drift is the only one of all the movies that has that's main focus is actually
racing.
Like I don't want to spoil the end of it because you haven't seen it yet, but that's the only movie where it's like the end thing is like, gotta race the dude to prove I'm the best. Like no other movie has that. You know, like legit. It's the only one that's like legit about racing. None of the rest are. It's like an integral part. It's like saying, you know, war movies about guns. I don't know, they are probably. I don't know, that's the thing. But yeah, so you're saying you find it okay? You're not head over heels?
No, yeah. Especially seeing where the characters are further along. It's like a bit of an odd... I think probably Letty is the character that's changed the most. Like, character-wise. I feel like in the first film, she's like overly... I mean, she acts overly girlish, I guess, more than she does in all the other films, even though... she? I don't know. She just seems very different to every other film.
Well, I can tell you that. I can tell you why. It's because she gets shot, spoilers, and then she can never get her memories back.
That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So, things you forget in an 8-movie franchise.
Damn right. Not for me, true fan. Kieran, how do you feel about this movie?
No, I really enjoyed it still. I think it shows its age a lot of the time, and there's a lot of time you mentally go, yes, it's very 2000s. There's, you know, the dress sense, there's some of the car designs, you're like, oof, okay. I think it's interesting, and especially when, you know, through the narrative points of it, you always kind of know from this. Well, I don't think you know the first time you watch it that it is Dom and that in his family that are doing the robberies. But I think by the time it's revealed and then rewatching it, it's very obvious that it is them and this is what they're responsible for. I think it's still a good movie. It does a really good job of building characters. I think the plot point you've mentioned in notes that says that Letty never has a conversation with Brian is amazing, because you think about it and you go, yeah, no, that's actually a thing. It's but I like the relationship between Brian and Dom a lot. I think the two actors have very good chemistry together, and I think that this is a very good. It's really weird. It's really weird and interesting that this relationship doesn't get built upon for two more movies. Like it waits till the fourth movie to build upon this again. That it's just very interesting to see how this series goes and how this pans out and how it starts in this movie with very focused on Brian and how that changes going forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other thing when looking at this movie is this is like, obviously there's a turning point for the franchise, and when this movie was being made, although there are some like not like super realistic parts to it, as far as like these movies go, this movie was trying to be realistic. You know, this is trying to tell a realistic story. The future movies go into the
Okay,
realm
in
of
comparison to
fantasy.
the other movies, then yes, it's realistic.
Yeah, they go off the road. Yeah, there's like all the race scenes in this, and like the way they're driving about 200 miles per hour and the straight road, and I mean it's not as bad as the airplane scene in one of the future movies where the track's about 18,000 miles long, but stuff like that's a bit weird. But when it comes down to telling, I was trying to tell like a gritty, like sort of realistic story, and I guess that like also means that when you put the characters in a more like fantastical setting, I guess the characters sort of like they change as well somewhat to fit the setting. You know what I mean? Like so like they're sort of written sorts of ways. But I do want to cover. Obviously, I mentioned this last week, but this could be super relevant if my theory comes true. And I'm only bringing up at the end because I think it would actually make heaps of sense, and I'm hoping it makes so much sense because it's obvious, which is that Dom's thing in this. Obviously, in this movie, they keep like teasing you about the fact, or the cops keep telling Brian, you know, like Dom beat someone with a quarter-inch wrench or whatever. Yeah. Beat his face to a pulp. Like he's not in control. He's an out of control person. Blah 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 blah. And I don't remember what I don't even know if I would have thought about it much when I was a kid watching all of this, like judging Dom as a character type thing. But it's hard to think about it now. But judging Dom as a character in the rewatch, I'm very much like I don't think he's off kilter at all. Like when he tells that story and about like. I think that's one of the better, like more serious, like character, obviously pieces when he's telling that story to Brian, where he's like, I saw the guy who caused my father's death. Like the way he just says, like I hit him, I didn't mean to keep hitting him, but you know, like it was a blur and I just kind of kept going. I think that seems like really important to not only this movie, but of course the future of the franchise, because if they left that in limbo for future movies, it would have been like a bit like this dude like beat someone to death. Like do we really like is Dom like a hero type character? Is he not? You know, this sort of thing. But because the way they explain it to you, I feel like, and I buy into it. Well, not saying I don't think he was like telling the truth. I do think he's obviously telling the truth there. But I understand, and obviously he did his time and everything like that. But I feel like it's a very human sort of story, and it's important to Dom's character. But then also, I do think that story is where is the best place to introduce potential
Jacob
brother. Jacob, his brother for the 9th movie, you know, because it's like
maybe like he gets all messed up when he goes to jail. You know, Jacob. I mean, is he going to be the youngest out of the 3, or do you think
he's the younger? He calls him younger brother in the trailer.
Yeah, but is he younger than me?
That we do know. I guess we don't know. Yeah. But it's like to me, it's like a really good fracture point is like dad dies. So obviously that's going to be, you got these 3 kids. What happens then? And then you're going to have Dom go to prison for 2 years. Younger brother's left out.
No. Or maybe he's like steps up in his absence and then Thom comes back and tries to be the alpha male again. You know, and then there's a falling out, something like that. I
mean, you could just make him disappear in those 2 years, and that's why he's never talked about him, because he thinks he's dead. That would, like, realistically, that would be the best way to explain why he's never brought him up. You know what I mean? Like, he's in prison for 2 years. He goes to prison. He leaves his little brother there. Something happens. He thinks by the time he gets out of prison, he thinks his little brother's dead. And that's why he's never been in the franchise before, you know? Like that is a good point to play with the retconning and the time and what have you and this sort of thing, to have a bit of fun with it. So who else we got? I forgot to go to the main cast before. Paul Walker, obviously Brian, Vin Diesel, Dominic, Michelle Rodriguez. I kind of get what you're saying for the whole Letty thing. I don't think she's being non-girly or whatever you were saying. In a lot of ways, her character is supposed to be like super
tomboyish. Like she's, you know.
Yeah, tomboyish, but she's supposed to be sexy.
Yeah, I think she's more sexual. I don't know. Yeah, something like that.
What, in this one or the future one?
In this one.
Do you mean? Yeah, she's meant to be.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, she's, you know, she's like, man, this Dominic Toretto, wouldn't you be like that if you were around him all the time before you got shot, and then after you got shot, you're probably like, gonna relax and enjoy the moment, you know?
Sure.
True. Yeah, that's sure. Then we got Jordana Brewster, obviously, as Mia, who takes. I mean, her character here, I guess, is not super interesting because it's the
Love interest.
the sister love interest, whatever. She doesn't have much to do. And in a lot of ways, I feel like her character is annoyingly got the least amount of growth because she got stuck as the love interest and then she got turned into like the mother and, you know, like all this sort of stuff, and also she disappeared. She wasn't in the 8th movie because spoilers for 7, they're like, she's off living her life with Brian. I keep nearly confusing actors with character names, but she's off living her life. She's back to 9, which is obviously interesting.
Does that mean good or bad things?
No, they're not going to say he's dead. It's fine. I guess she just got called in. He's like, oh, I'm on baby duty. It's fine. But yeah, I'm looking forward to her being back for 9 because, like, she has a fight with Letty in that. We'll see it in the trailer. So I'm like, she's finally going to get. I mean,
she'll get a story without Brian.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds bad to say because I obviously wish that Brian was still in it, and I wish that Paul Walker hadn't died, obviously. But like, without all that away and trying to sound really mean about it, obviously without him there, without him in this movie, she does finally in 9, she'll get her chance to shine a bit more on her own. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Ricky Yune's in this movie, which is, by the way, in case anyone doesn't know, he's the bad guy from Die Another Day. Chad Lindberg, Jesse, I think is like one of the more interesting characters from this. And in a lot of ways, I wish he hadn't have died in this because I thought I could see him fitting in well with.
He could
like,
be brought
future.
back.
Well, guess what? Fast and Furious 10. Jesse's Revenge.
Jesse is the bad guy for Fast 10. Jesse is the ultimate bad guy.
Thom, if only you'd taken me to the hospital instead of driving
Chasing after the guy.
If you had just left me alone with Mia and you both ran off after my killers, I would have been fine.
It's true. Another one. Well, so Johnny Strong plays Leon in this movie, which is we've nearly rounded up the Fast family of the original here, but he is still alive. He has not shown up in any sequels, and that actor in real life has been asked why he hasn't done them yet, and he's like, they've like asked me or something. I'm not real too interested because they're not like the first one. He basically shit on them by saying that they're too silly these days for him to care.
Wow.
But I'm like, come on, dude, get your shit on straight. You're only known for this movie, all right? Come on, come back. Come back and do another one.
He might be very wealthy.
I'm sure he is. And then Mark Schulze. Schulze? Matt Schulze. Schulze, I think, is of course introduced in this one as Vince. And he's a standout. We'll come back to him in a second because we'll talk about the family part. But any other random overall thoughts for the movie?
Ja Rule's in this movie, and it's weird.
Is it weird? No, but you got to remember, 2001.
Yeah,
it wasn't weird.
It wasn't weird at the time.
If you look at the soundtrack as well, he's all over the soundtrack.
Yes, he is.
Yep.
I think he has like 2 or 3 separate
It was weird
sections.
listening to the start of the movie and then his voice comes in.
Yeah, but you gotta, he's like they have him in this one, and that's why in Too Fast Too Furious they're like, oh, the thing for these movies is now we hire rappers that do songs and they're also in the movie, so we'll have Ludacris.
And then he just showed up in every other movie.
Yeah, because they're like, Ja Rule's over here doing criminal scheming in real life, so
he's creating festivals that don't run properly.
Mm-hmm. So we're not going to have him. That's fine. All right, so the family, the important characters introduced for this movie: Brian O'Connor, Dominic Toretto, obviously. Now, you were saying before that you think they're sort of different to how they end up, but doesn't that make sense anyway? Like, because obviously this is the first movie.
Aren't they supposed to be different?
Yeah, it's like,
I guess like they age a lot between. Like, you got to remember, in between this part and the next time we see them, there's 2 movies which span several years, you would reckon. And they've all been through stuff, you know. Like, Brian has been through a whole nother movie full of just really random shit. He jumped a car into a boat and he's living the life afterwards, you know? Spoilers, you know, we've already spoiled a lot of things, Dylan. Jeez. And then we've got, you know, Dom, who has been living his life on the run away from Letty for some time. And then everything kind of comes crashing back together and they all get kind of pushed together by quote-unquote destiny. It's just how it happens.
I don't think I'd expect to hear destiny in the Fast and Furious together.
It's all about destiny. It's all about
family and destiny.
Destiny.
Sure. That's right. But yeah, I think like as much as like I can like you'd be like, yeah, the characters change somewhat obviously by the time you get to the current day films. That makes perfect sense to me because as Kieran just said, there's quite like a lengthy amount of time between these movies. And someone they kept, because they did like this whole jumbling of timelines and stuff like that, they had to like put subtle things into certain movies to help the timeline actually make sense. And what they ended up doing to help the timeline all make sense is that they ended up, although Tokyo Drift released in like 2006 or whatever year that came out, they ended up like canonically it's set in 2013 is what they ended up having to do to like make all of the timeline stuff work out.
That makes sense because Tokyo is like a very place that doesn't like change very much.
Yeah.
No,
it's not like at the high front of like technology or anything.
No, the technology doesn't date that movie whatsoever.
It's fine. Cars still go forward and they drift. It's fine.
And they still make vans look like the Hulk and stuff like that. Like it's all about that. Like.
Exactly. Yeah. Ahead of the time, really. In a lot of ways, Brian, I think, is the character that changes the most because he becomes less, I don't know, like obviously in this one and very much in the second one, he's like got this very much street kid way he speaks, I guess. You know what I mean? Like he's like trying to, like it's more the hippish version, I guess. And then in future ones, I feel like that calms down a lot more and he's less of that. Whereas Dom becomes more like family and
I think for this
he doesn't
one
say family once.
No,
it's ridiculous.
It's very much the difference though, where you can see that in this movie, Brian is, we don't know it, we know it because of other movies, but Brian is very much trying to make himself fit into the world of the police force in that world and be away from what his past was, be away from his upbringing when he was, you know, doing things like lifting cars and making mistakes. And he's trying to push himself away from that. But then, you know, naturally in this movie, he just gets drawn back in and he feels more at home. And you can see him becoming more at home with the family than he is with any of the police that he interacts with.
Makes sense. And that's probably why he falls so quickly back into liking the life, I guess, the hashtag life.
Why was he pretending to be a bad driver at the start? Like
I don't think
run
he's
his
pretending.
car into a curb and that kind of stuff.
He wasn't pretending.
He sucked. I think what happens, and they don't really spell it out, I feel like through a period of time, because you got to remember there's got to be some time jumps in this movie, because when he first interacts with Dom early, Dom says there's a month until Race Wars. And then there's like it doesn't take that long to get to Race Wars. So I think in that time, it's kind of left out, but I feel like Dom has taught him how to drive properly. Because after the first race, Dom makes fun of his way he's driving, how he's not double shifting the clutch or anything like that, and he's not doing things properly. I think he's just, he gets taught how to properly drive.
He doesn't like it. That opening scene is his car topping out at 140 or whatever, and then he loses control of it. Which is why when he goes into the store, he's like, "Oh, I need NOS and all this sort of shit and all that stuff." He's like, he's practicing at the start of the movie is him practicing the race so he can go to the track later that night, and potentially be big dog, you know. But obviously he failed. Yeah. And then other characters introduced as part of the family, of course, are Letty, who obviously changes quite a lot throughout the following movies. In a lot of ways, killing her worked out well because they got to sort of reboot her, I guess. Okay. But when they get to that, and then here's where I put that. She never watched. The first time you see her and Brian have a conversation isn't until number 5. It's the first time they have a conversation together on screen, although they've shared 3 movies together at that point, and it's the 5th movie in the franchise, and they're some of the main characters, so that's quite funny. Then you got Mia introduced, which we went over, and then Vince is introduced here, which of course he comes back later in the movies, Vince is like, I feel like Vince is like this. They like looked at Dom's character and they're like, let's take like all the like potentially super aggro side of Dom's character and just turn that into a character without any nuance, you know?
Yeah,
That's Vince.
exactly.
Like super macho dude with literally no off button or chill, you know? Like if he was in charge of the group, they would have got caught 10 weeks ago.
Even when you were like, you think you get to the moment where he's about to accept Brian into the group and he comes back for the barbecue and everything, and then the very next scene he's back to being a total douchebag again. You're like, oh, okay, no, you've
sexist
got
douchebag.
You've got no redeeming features in this movie. Okay, sure, go for it.
Yeah. I'll save when he comes back, but I'm glad they eventually bring him back as well. It's on my favorite. I bring it up here before we move on to favorite line and sort of stuff. Because rewatching this movie, there's lots of stuff that stand out, lots of scenes I love. In general, I enjoyed watching all of the movie, but I really think the end of this movie is great. Like the final, like the emotional scene between Mia and Brian, like when he like says that he's a cop and he has to get her the help and all that sort of stuff, and the way they build up all that, like because they're racing down at night first, and then the sun's coming up and they're racing in, and that whole, I remember the first couple times I watched this movie as a kid, that the whole truck driver sequence at the end was like super fucking tense. You know, like I was like, oh my God, dude's got a like shotgun, like diving onto the cars and all that sort of hanging off the wire. It's like,
when they were down to one car following the truck, why didn't he just stop?
Who?
The truck driver.
Because he wanted to separate,
kill him.
He wanted to separate Vince from the rest of them, so he could either kill Vince or probably take him to, the police.
Yeah, he's not like, I'll get off, I'll leave his. He's like, I want blood. You know.
Yeah.
Like
he could have stopped the truck and then gotten out and shot him in the head.
Yeah, but what if the cars pull up real quickly?
He wanted to be far enough away from the others. He only had a freaking double barrel shotgun that only had 2 clips in it. He couldn't,
they weren't firing back.
By the way, if he slows down and he sees their cars coming, that truck ain't taken off too far.
Yeah.
Again, what are they doing with their cars? Nothing. They're not going to endanger their friend. What are they going to do? Ram him off the road? Don't think so.
I will say I love the tense moment with Dom and Brian, where Brian's making the phone call to get medical help for
he's staring at
Vince, and just their eye contact the entire time, where you can see Brian's like, I don't know how this is going to go, but I need to do this to save him. But I gotta do it. Yeah. But I gotta do it, and just his, you could see the betrayal on Vin Diesel's face. You could see the emotions he's going through, and it's really interesting.
Which is why it works so well. Like that scene is why the ending works, because you get to see how betrayed he feels, and by the time they get back to the garage and he's about to go off and try and find Jesse, and like the fact that Dom's about to get in that car he's never gotten in his life and all this stuff, you can tell like his life's kind of just falling apart at this point. And that's why, you get to that final moment where Brian hands him the keys. It's like you can tell, even though Dom takes off fast, that there's no way when Dom's driving off, he doesn't he's like, fuck you, but also like there's a tiny bit of respect at least for him doing that, knowing what it was going to do to him. And also, since we're talking about the truck, I just should remember the opening scene for this movie.
That's dope. Yeah, that's very good.
Car going under the truck and all that sort of shit. I was like, oh my God.
I couldn't remember the car being under the truck for that long, driving in a straight line. Yeah. I was like, that's fucking pretty impressive. That's pretty cool.
There's some really cool car stuff. But by the way, like there are some like bad special effects stuff in this, obviously, which we talked about, but also there are some really good practical car stuff happening in here. And in general, there are a couple movies like 2 and 4, they use like too much CGI, I think. But like this one, 3 obviously has like really great drifting, and then the rest of them, 5, 6, 7, all of those, as ridiculous as they are, a lot of the car stuff is actually shot practically. Not to skip too far hard ahead, but like for example, when they drop the cars out of the sky, they drop cars out of the sky, like legit, because they want it to look as realistic as possible. So that's always like one thing I like about the movies. They try to make it. They know it's silly, but they try and shoot as much real as they practically can for most of the time. All right, so what's everyone's favorite line from this movie? My one is one that I love quoting all the time, and I can fit it into different ways, which is Dominic Toretto when he says, "It doesn't matter whether you win by an inch or by a mile, winning is winning," which is just bring it into any faction of your life, turn it into anything you want. Great line. Ash, what's your favorite line for this one?
It's not how you stand by a car, it's how you race your car.
Karen?
You didn't even have your car. It's such, like, I just appreciate just the comeback, and I've had people use it on me in my day-to-day life, or just with different moments. I'm like, such a good comeback. Such a great moment. I love it how none of us have picked any of the most famous quotes from this movie.
Well, that's a famous one, surely. No?
Yeah.
What's the most famous ones?
I don't think it, but then I don't, like, nobody's picked the "I live my life a quarter mile at a time," which is
true.
kind of a defining quote for the entire franchise.
Yeah, he keeps saying it, so not very specific.
Well, we'll pick it at some point.
It's the whole franchise. You can pick it from any movie he's in. Getting into the mix, picking 2 songs each to chuck into our ultimate Fast Saga mix that you can find on Spotify right now. Link in the description, of course. The 2 songs I'm putting up are both the Ja Rule ones because they're the standout ones. So, Furious, Ja Rule, and Life Ain't a Game, Ja Rule. Ash.
I also had Furious by Ja Rule and Deep Enough by Live, or Live, whichever one it is.
I don't actually know. Kieran.
I also had Furious by Ja Rule, so let's just all include that.
Fine.
And then, for the delight of everybody to really feel like they're in the 2000s, Rollin' by Limp Bizkit.
No. I was really hoping no one would pick it. Fucking Limp Bizkit. It's the worst song on it. Keep rolling. Get the fuck out of here.
Important, they're talking about the wheels.
Yeah.
They are
That's important.
talking
That's what the car does. It keeps rolling, Dylan. Did you know? Anyway, looks like we're all out of NOS for this week's episode. You can follow us all on Twitter by heading to exposurenetwork.com/Twitter. Next week, we're discussing Too Fast, Too Furious, including the turbocharged prelude for Too Fast, Too Furious. So make sure you track down and watch both of those before the episode drops next week. And we'll be back next week. Don't forget, the hashtag justice is coming.
Hashtag, is it though?
Oh my God, stop it.